Namaskar. In today's edition of Right Angle, I'll be sharing my thoughts with you on the unfortunate developments that have taken place inside and outside our parliament over the last 2-3 days. As you know, we just witnessed 2-day-long deliberations in the parliament on the Indian Constitution. Dispassionately viewed, whether it was the ruling National Democratic Alliance members led by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, or the members belonging to so-called India Alliance led by Congress Supremo Rahul Gandhi, the discussions led to the impression, and that is what my impression is, that the Indian Constitution is Dr. B.R. Ambedkar and Dr. B.R. Ambedkar is the Indian Constitution. It was like Indira is India and India was Indira, this sort of thing that we heard during the emergency era way back in 1975. So now the impression that is being given is B.R. Ambedkar is the Indian Constitution and Indian Constitution is B.R. Ambedkar. The debate between the treasury benches and the opposition thus was confined essentially to who are better followers of Ambedkar. Ambedkar was the chairman of the drafting committee of the Constituent Assembly, drafting committee of our Constitution in the Constituent Assembly. But to describe him as the sole drafter of India's Constitution, that some members, both in the NDA as well as in the India Alliance, tried to project, I think it's something that would have embarrassed Ambedkar himself, because there are many things mentioned in the Constitution of ours that Ambedkar left to himself would not have even accepted. Both his admirers and critics will agree that Ambedkar was a champion dissenter in the days of Mahatma Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru. Therefore, it is really surprising, in my view, that in today's politics of Narendra Modi and Rahul Gandhi, a word against Ambedkar implies treason. I think that is precisely what happened. Ambedkar, a great democrat that he was, and a great champion of dissent that he was, would really have been most unhappy had he been alive to see what is happening, all in his name. That means such pathetic state of affairs now we are in our political discourse, that you cannot say a word about Gandhi, you can't say a word about Nehru, you can't say a word now about Ambedkar. Bhai, what sort of democracy is this? Does this really empower, or does this really reflect well of our democracy that we all are proud of? I really shudder to think what would have happened to that veteran editor and author who was also a cabinet minister under Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee. I am talking of Mr. Arun Sori. Now he is a big advisor to the opposition, and I think like Rahul Gandhi, Modi Hatao also is his big motto or goal. If you go by his occasional writings, he doesn't write that fluently or that regularly as he used to, and whenever he addresses, so Modi Hatao, it's exactly as I will say that he must be taken or he must be now viewed, or he perhaps is being viewed as a great advisor to the India alliance. But he was, as I said, a cabinet minister, a BJP leader under Mr. Vajpayee. But I say, why I am talking of Arun Shourie? Imagine Arun Shourie in the year 1997 had authored a book. And do you know what that book was? That book's title was Worshipping False Gods. Ambedkar, the Facts Which Have Been Erased. That means that book said that Ambedkar was a false god. There are many things about him that the countrymen did not know that Mr. Shourie tried to highlight through his research in his book. And that book came in 1997. He's talking of, or rather he's viewing Ambedkar as a false god. Imagine if that book would have come today, would Arun Shourie's, would he have been alive today? I think he would have been perhaps the way that we are seeing what happened yesterday. I will not be surprised if he would have been murdered today by our politicians. And whether MPs and ministers, they would have a gun and openly shot him dead. And again, saying that we have done the right thing by killing a person who was considering or who viewed Ambedkar as a false god. So where the hell we have come? What sort of deterioration in our democracy, which is supposed to encourage free flow of thoughts and various ideas, where that democracy has come? So coming back to Mr. Shourie's book, do you know in this book he delved into archival records to ask some pertinent questions. Did Ambedkar coordinate his opposition to the freedom struggle with the British? The point that he tried to make was this, that he was thoroughly opposed to Gandhi's movement against the British to leave India, against the British Raj. And I think Ambedkar certainly did agree with those Congress views. That's why, Mr. Shourie pointed out, highlighted, by doing the research, that actually he was not even in favor of country getting the freedom. And how does Mr. Ambedkar's approach to social change contrast with that of Mahatma Gandhi? Because did the Constitution spring from him, or did it grow as a dynamic living organism? That's what I said. There are many points our Constitution enshrined, and we say that Ambedkar is the father of our Constitution. As I said, he's a great Democrat because for him dissent was everything. He really valued dissent, and that is why, despite he not agreeing with many things that our Constitution has or had, did not hesitate to draft it or chair that drafting committee. That is called he being a true Democrat. That means he didn't believe in something, but overall for the greater thing he did do his job. Because there are many things, as I said, that book of Mr. Shourie, and as I'll be arguing it little later, some of the points that Ambedkar said or wrote is not necessarily in tune with what we are made to believe today. Ambedkar's views on partition, he was totally opposed to this partition of the country into two parts, India and Pakistan. For him, partition would be making no sense. I'm talking of Ambedkar. Actually, those people who are talking of Ambedkar and saying Ambedkar, I doubt whether they have read what Mr. Ambedkar had talked about. I personally think on this particular point, Ambedkar was a visionary. He said, until and unless there is total exchange of population, that means all the Muslims all the Muslims will be going to Pakistan, and all the Hindus in those days in East Pakistan, that is today's Bangladesh and Pakistan, would be coming to India. Total exchange of population. I think something to that effect had happened following the Second World War in Central Europe. I exactly don't remember. There are 2-3 countries where this total exchange of population took place. When the countries were reorganized, some new countries came into the map of Europe. So Ambedkar was saying, you're that Hindu Muslim, that communal problem will never be solved until and unless through this partition. Communal problem will not be solved through this partition until and unless all the Hindus living in Pakistan come to India and all the Muslims living in India go to Pakistan. And I think perhaps he was right, because the partition has taken place, but our so-called Hindu-Muslim problems continue to be as bitter as it was in the pre-partition days. Similarly, Ambedkar was totally opposed to this special provision of 370 in Kashmir. So my point is this: as far as Mr. Ambedkar, another thing was concerned, why Ambedkar, despite all his great democratic credentials, could not rise to become a leader of all Indians. I think that is one of the very constructive criticism against Ambedkar, in my opinion, is this. Because despite his undoubted scholarship, his prime focus was on the Dalits, the community he belonged to, and their empowerment. So his hatred for the Sanatan Dharma was such that he wanted to penalize even those reading our Shrutis and Smritis. The point that I am making is this: perhaps Ambedkar preferred to remain a leader of Dalits rather than becoming a national leader acceptable to all Indians. And I think, as I said, given his talent, given his really that way democratic ethos, belief, he really could have become a great leader of all Indians. But his only obsession with Dalits perhaps could not take him beyond that impression or narrative of he being a great national leader, in that sense acceptable to all the communities. That perhaps explains why such differences were there between him and the Congress leaders, particularly Nehru, and why he could not win some elections. Congress really fought against them, and I don't know how the controversial circumstances under which he quit from the Nehru cabinet and his various views on that. It is quite possible that perhaps by not entrusting Ambedkar with more important responsibilities in his cabinet, maybe Nehru could not facilitate the process of Ambedkar being a real national leader, being acceptable to all the Indians, not exactly to be seen as a Dalit leader. So the point that I am trying to make is that, ideally speaking, a constitution must be acceptable to all, quote unquote all, I am saying O-A-L-L, all. Ambedkar may have left the drafting of such a constitution, but that, as he said later, was against his will, quote unquote. And he later said that whatever was written in the constitution was actually forced upon him. And to that extent, I think sometime in September 53, I think 2nd September 1953, while debating how a governor in a country should be invested with more powers, in the Rajya Sabha, Dr. Ambedkar said that the constitution needs an amendment, because I think it was something again certain rights for the minorities and the Dalits in one particular or in one or two particular states. But those elected governments, he was not satisfied with them. That's why he said that governor must have the power to intervene. Under our constitution, the governors in the states act accordingly to the aid and advice of the council of ministers, except certain other circumstances at the time of the government being formed, if there are some doubts. So that's a different matter. But they are supposed to work with the aid and advice of their respective cabinet. But here Ambedkar said that if the elected governments are not doing enough for the Dalits or for that matter the minorities, then the governor should be given some power to intervene. So the constitution needs to be amended accordingly. So in that context, he said, and I'm quoting, this is what he said in the Rajya Sabha during his intervention. Sir, my friends, I'm quoting, sir, my friends tell me that I have made the constitution, but I am quite prepared to say that I shall be the first person to burn it out. I do not want it. It does not suit anybody, unquote. The maker of Indian constitution did not hesitate even to say this. So he thus advocated strongly that the constitution needs to be amended if our people want to carry on. That again is quote unquote. He said that if our people want to carry on, the constitution needs to be amended. So that is what Mr. Ambedkar did say. And it is also equally interesting to note that Ambedkar was not in favor of the idea of a constituent assembly. That is very important. I think Arun Sore's book very clearly says that. Though he later became a part of it to chair the drafting committee. In fact, as one scholar, Bineet Krishna, he edits Center for Law and Policy Research, he heads that. He has aptly pointed out, again by doing some research, that while addressing on 6th May 1945, a gathering of the All India Scheduled Caste Federation, Ambedkar asked, and I am quoting, should there be a constituent assembly charged with the function of making a constitution? For him, the answer was a firm no. He stated that a constituent assembly was, again, quote, absolutely superfluous. I regard it as the most dangerous project which may involve this country in a civil war, unquote. And in fact, in his speech, he provided two sets of reasons for his position, why he said that Constituent Assembly is not desirable. I think, for one, he said that unlike the time when Americans were framing Constitution in the late 1700s, that they are the first country to bring out a written democratic constitution. Though Britain is considered, British democracy is considered to be the most practiced, but Britain doesn't have a written constitution. And when the Americans fought for their independence against the British rulers in America, so in late 70s, I think 1774, I think the American War of Independence began, if my sense of history still is right. And I think they then, talked of having a written constitution. So that is what Ambedkar was, pointing out. Those days, for the American Constitution, making constitutional ideas and constitutional forms are ready at hand. But that means, they had to really work for. They were not ready at hand, in a way, in the sense that. But in case of India, what exactly is being done? It is because our constitution actually, I think let me explain it this way. What Mr. Ambedkar was saying, that all the various constitutional features that we are talking of are not that we are talking of not exactly very novel ideas. As I said, that when the Americans were preparing, they had to start from scratch because they were going to write a written constitution. But Ambedkar was right in saying so. But what we are supposed to do in Constituent Assembly, to pick and choose from so many other constitutions of the world. And in fact, our constitution is predominantly a replica of the Government of India Act of 1935. Predominantly, that's why you see that our Prime Minister is talking many rules, regulations. They are 200 years old, because the British rules still are in effective. Why? Because in our constitution many things were straight lifted from the Government of India Act of 1935. So plus there are many other things which he copied from other constitutions, like this I think Bill of Rights, particularly fundamental rights, was from France. Then there are certain features we copied from Irish Constitution, certain features we copied from the American Constitution. So things of that sort. So that way, and then it had very little. It had very little to include from our own culture, from our own history, from our own civilizational ethos. So and then another thing is that this Constituent Assembly is not was composed of members who are elected by the Indian people. So that means a select lot of people, and then 80 to 90% of them are the Congress members. Those days Congress members, 80 to 90% of them, and they were a select group of people. बाकी 5-10% और कहाँ से जोड़ दिए होंगे. They were not elected people, and they are being asked to frame a constitution for all the Indian people. I think that is a criticism. I'm not saying whether this is right or wrong, I'm not talking, but I said these are very legitimate criticisms against the Constituent Assembly, the way our constitution was made. And as I said, then most of these members were Congress. That means one particular political party had tremendously dominated the making of all these things, and that were said that will be enforced or implemented for all Indian people. And this Constituent Assembly, as I said, was as per the British decision. When the Brits decided to leave India, so there was a cabinet mission plan, how India will be operating or functioning after the Britishers left. And this cabinet mission plan didn't talk of actually partition between India and Pakistan. That it's things were not acceptable to Nehru and Gandhi. That's a different matter. Let's not get into it. But the point was that they had made up their mind to leave it, and they wanted that before they formally leave in 1947, the India must have a constitution, and that constitution must be made. And they said that you must have a Constituent Assembly to form it, and to debate and discuss and to draft a proper constitution for the country. Now, so, and these things that I am saying, the other day Mr. Jairam Ramesh said that how the famous British constitutional expert like Sir Ivor Jennings said. And I think these points that I said, these criticisms of our Constituent Assembly are the criticisms made by none other than Mr. Ivor Jennings and some other constitutional experts of the time. Henry Austin was there, one Professor Austin, and this Ivor Jennings. They all say this. And Ambedkar also believed in these sorts of criticisms. As I said, that is why he was not in favor of India having a Constituent Assembly. That he subsequently joined and drafted is something different matter. That's why I said that is his democratic credentials. Though he personally was opposed to many of the features that he himself drafted with his colleagues in the drafting committee, and whatever he drafted, ultimately it was debated thoroughly in the Constituent Assembly. The other members also, they did participate. Some of the draft view were accepted, some were changed. So it is not actually one person's property, the way our leaders, whether they belong to NDA or for that matter in the India Alliance, will like us to believe. No, sir. It was not. That's why I said that right at the very beginning, Ambedkar is not the Constitution, and the Constitution is not an Ambedkar. And I think the Ambedkar himself would have accepted this thing like no other person. He was 1,000 times a better Democrat than any one of our leaders that we see either in NDA or for that matter India Alliance. And certainly he was 1,000 times more Democrat than the likes of Mr. Kharge, Jairam Ramesh, and the great Rahul Gandhi. So let's not talk about it the way they really make us believe what Ambedkar's Constitution is, and why there will be a competition to have that ownership of Ambedkar and his ideas. So there is another thing also. I think that is my last point here. Any constitution, as I said, that how Mr. Ambedkar said that if the Indian people want it, there must be amendments. So bringing out amendments from time to time, and when obviously the amendments will be brought out, it will be brought out by the elected government of that particular time. Because as I said, if this constitution right from the very beginning exactly did not reflect the ethos, wills and aspirations of Indians, then as we become a functioning democracy, if such will and aspiration need to be reflected from time to time, the constitution needs to change. There is nothing very nothing to be surprised about this. But to view it as that constitution is being destroyed is nothing, it is a perverse way of looking at it. Constitution is like a living body, it must react to the changing situations. Because as I said, Ambedkar talked of it, and that is why it has been, if my statistics is correct, 106 times it has been amended so far, after it came into force in 1950. Why such amendments have not taken place? These amendments have precisely been brought about because 106 till September 2023, and then many more, as you know, are waiting for Parliament's approval. In this session also, one or two have been introduced, like One Nation, One Poll. Then last time, of course, that Waqf property, but so far 106 times the constitution has been amended, and I think it is a need of the hour. For instance, when Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee was the Prime Minister, I think 2000, that Vajpayee government had established what is called the National Commission to review the working of the Constitution, NCRWC, to examine the Constitution and suggest amendments. And the Commission's terms of reference included like examining how the constitution can respond to the changing needs of the country towards efficient, smooth and effective system of governance and socio-economic development of modern India. Then it was supposed to recommend changes to the constitution without interfering with its basic structure or in the features. And this commission headed by Justice, what was his name, A.M.N. Venkatachalaya, had made various recommendations in 2002 pertaining to fundamental rights, directive principles, fundamental duties, then electoral processes and political parties, parliament, state legislatures. Then it also had recommended some changes in the executive and public administration, judiciary. It had recommendations on union and state relations. It had talked of how the country needs to be decentralized, and there is decentralization and devolution. Then how the pace of economic change and development must be gaining further momentum. So many things, various legislative and executive actions and measures that they had recommended. Obviously, the then Vajpayee government could not implement these recommendations because it could not create the necessary political consensus on them. But the point is unmistakable, and that is that amending the constitution is not killing or murdering the constitution, something that the likes of Rahul Gandhi will like us to believe. Every successful amendment brought out by the ruling government from time to time needs to be seen as a people's changed aspiration. Whatever was proposed or drafted by Ambedkar's committee in 1949 cannot remain sacred for all time to come. The Constitution, after all, as I have been saying, is a living document that can change from time to time. Let me stop here. Thank you for your patience.